Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
Thank God for audiobook narrators. What fresh hell.
Laughing in the face of motherhood.
I get that it's a metaphor, guys, but wow.
With Margaret Abels
and Amy Wilson.
We should have picked up on how bad those Fruit Loops were, because I certainly had the side of the box memorized.
A podcast that solves today's parenting dilemmas
so you don't have to.
Oddly, I did spend 6 hours on the Mormon Wives Reddit page.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Amy.
And this is Margaret. Today we're discussing, can we get our kids to read? Just another thing on the invisible workload. Our kids aren't reading.
I feel like this is getting harder than it used to be, and that many kids are reluctant readers. Yeah, I'm in the valley on this one, so I hope I have some good tips to learn today.
It's changed within my household, both because of the age of my children and because of the role of screens. Both of those things have really changed my relationship to reading and my kids' relationship to reading. Not for the better, as it turns out.
Yes, exactly. Like when that option to just check this thing one more time, this, I don't know, jack-in-the-box of constantly changing, stimulating content, this cavalcade that passes by in front of you as opposed to having to imagine something.
Right. Why would we want to read when we can watch people do the opalite dance 600 different ways on TikTok, right?
But it's worth it.
So we're going to come out, spoiler alert, pro-reading.
Right.
We're going to talk about some strategies to get to reading. But I also think we're going to be realistic about what's going on. Like, how much of this can we control and how much can't we control? And also, who said this was our job in the first place? I mean, the universe probably, but we can discuss it.
Right.
Tell me about this is often called reluctant readers. Mm-hmm. And reluctant, we're going to talk about, can break down in a lot of ways. Like, am I currently a reluctant reader? I am an enthusiastic reader of Reddit threads about Mormon wives, but I am a reluctant reader of that book I've been trying to read for 3 years about the redheaded boy that's a retelling of David Copperfield, Demon Copperhead.
Demon Copperhead, right. I am very excited. We're actually talking in our next episode. We're going to be talking to Meredith Schwartz from the Currently Reading podcast about how to get us to read more. And I can't wait to get into that because I need that. I need this work for me, for sure.
We have talked about as business partners sometimes. So when we go through like a to-do list for our podcast, the things that are on the to-do list for 6 months straight, we have to kind of relook at and be like, what's happening here? This is a problem that we're never solving. And I think reading for me right now is a little bit in that category. So I want to think about that question too.
Yeah. And well, the point is that when you do read, you feel better, and so getting back to our kids, their brains will be expanded. They will enjoy it. There is a deep enjoyment you get out of it that you don't get out of Instagram. And so it's worthwhile to choose the harder thing. But you were going to ask me about reluctant readers in my house.
Correct.
I feel like I have, 3 like could take it or leave it readers, unfortunately. And I have big kids now, like high school and college students. I have one kid with a reading disorder. And so that's hard because reluctant reader for somebody with a learning disability is because it's hard.
Right.
A reluctant reader for good reason who doesn't read because it's difficult, it doesn't, of course, get any easier. And it's hard to be too hard on somebody who has an actual decoding disorder to make them read more. And yet that is sort of the fix for it. So it's a thorny one.
I have 2 strong readers and 1 struggling reader. Again, a learning disability decoding issue. My reluctant reader is the only person in our entire family who currently reads for pleasure.
Wow.
Which is interesting. We've all fallen off reading because of our screens, all of us. I used to read, I would say I read 30 books a year, generally. And now I read 5, maybe. I mean, I'm not counting. I read a lot of books for the show. So I'm taking those off the list.
Right. There's at least a book a week we're looking at for the show, but you're like, that's work. That's not.
That's work. And I'm not reading for pleasure. That category of reading for pleasure, this year, I have read 3 books, 2 were audiobooks. I have a drive that I do a couple times a week. So I tend to have an audiobook going there, which, by the way, counts as reading. Audiobooks count as reading.
Heaven knows. Let's count it as reading. Right.
My husband is a hilarious reader because he doesn't read for pleasure. And then eventually I will convince him, what is the book about the video game developers? Tomorrow. That book. Did you read it?
I sure did. Loved it.
It's about game developers, basically. And my husband is an engineer and a computer guy. And I kept telling him, you will love this book. You will love this book. And he read it in 13 hours, basically, from start to finish. He just absorbs a book.
On or off.
And then I'll find him up at 3:00 in the morning. And he's like, yeah, I'm just finishing the book. Like, he'll stay awake all night reading a book. Reading like a chapter at a time, nah, not happening.
This raises an interesting question for me. Like, well, I read a book a week for the podcast. Well, our kids are obviously reading stuff for school, or at least we hope so, but they're not reading for pleasure. Like, I want you to want to read, right?
Right.
And is that something where we should be worried about, I guess, coming into this? Yes, everybody should want to read and should read for pleasure extra because it's good for you. But
should they? Question mark.
Is it a problem if they don't? Yeah.
I think it's a good question. Let's, first of all, I'm going to quickly review 6 ways to engage reluctant readers. Are you ready?
Sure. Is this all ages and stages?
All ages and stages. But the stage begins when children can read independently, is what we're talking about. Because reading to your children, please do that from the time they are an infant. Reading out loud to kids, very foundational and important.
I did this all when my kids were little, especially because I enjoyed it. I'm a ham. Like, we read Harry Potter, we read the Betsy Tacy books.
You were like out-of-work actress available for reading silly
Exactly.
voices.
36 Voices, all of the series of unfortunate events. And they loved it. And that's a great place to instill a love of books.
That work does pay off. So you want to start with an infant reading board books at an early age. Reading out loud as a part of a bedtime routine is a great way to establish a base of reading and a love of reading. Then, as kids get independent in their reading, it doesn't mean you have to stop reading to them. So my kids were able to read, as I'm sure yours were, when you were reading Harry Potter. They could have read it themselves, but we read it out loud together as a family.
That's
and then
right.
we would have it in the car. Harry Potter books, series of unfortunate event books, those books we would read at night. My husband was the reader doing the silly voices. And then whenever we were in the car, we would then listen to the next chapter. We would basically, okay, we read chapter 27. Now we're getting into the car. We're going to have chapter 28 while we drive over to grandma's house, whatever it was. So that's a great idea, to start a basis of reading, that reading is something that happens every day. I did that very, very meticulously for 10 years, probably between the time my kids were born and 10 years old.
Me too.
And it has not resulted in a true love of reading for my children. So still good to have done.
But who knows what would happen if you hadn't read? The idea that reading is foundational and that kids need to be read to, and that kids who are read to are set up for preschool in a whole other way than kids who are not read to regularly. I mean, I believe all that to be true.
Absolutely. You should be reading to your kids from infancy.
Yeah.
Great idea. Great practice. In terms of other rules, so we said reading is reading. Any kind of reading. Read me what it says on the back of the cereal box. Kids today will never know the joy of being like, oh, 30% niacin. Like we read every word on the cereal box. You would get so bored. You're like, packaged at Kellogg's.
We should have picked up on how bad those Fruit Loops were, because I certainly had the side of the box memorized. But
I mean, I didn't know what niacin was doing for me, but I knew what percentage the Lucky Charms had. I mean, you would read the box.
Yep.
Comic books and graphic novels are books.
Yes.
Face value of books sometimes turns parents. You should be reading Little Women. You should not be reading Captain Poopy Pants and the Fart Machine from Hell.
Mm-hmm.
Books are books. Sometimes if we push kids to only be reading worthy books, we're turning them off of reading.
Although I will say, my youngest kid, I would drop her older brothers off at school, and then there were still 20 minutes before her classroom opened. So I would take her to the school library. And when it was me reading to my child, that's when I would pick Betsy Tacy or the Laura Ingalls Wilder books or whatever, even though my kid was pretty young at the time. But I wasn't forcing them into my child's hands to read to themselves. Right? I feel like when you're picking the books, you can pick stuff with a little bit of merit, even if it's storytelling merit.
Unless it's leading to less reading. That's the only thing I would say.
Right. When they're reading them themselves, yes, exactly. If they're picking the Farty Booger Man and they're excited about it, then great.
Yeah, and if they're willing to read Farty Booger Man with you and not Little Women, go Farty Booger Man. You know, that's the key. That's the key. Lots of trips to the library. I mean, this was something, again, that we did religiously. We have a school campus in my town that has the little town library there. And our practice was on Thursdays after elementary school, we went to the library and everybody picked 2 books. And then I would keep them forever and get fined for them. And often no one would read them. But I still think the practice of going and the practice of saying to your kids, go talk to the librarian and find out where the books about rockets are or the dinosaurs you like. And a good children's librarian is going to be lit up by a kid coming over and trying to find books.
Yeah.
And just like books are a part of our fabric is an important message.
I still love going to the library or the bookstore. I love the options around me. And just to be a kid and be like, you can get as many as you want. Where else do they have that? Nobody's taking their kids to Target and saying you can have the whole toy section if you want. You go to the library, like, sure, bring home 30 books. And then next week you can get 30 more if you want to. And just letting them have that excitement of all of this is available to me. Start young. You know, who wouldn't be excited about that as a 4 or 5-year-old?
I like a trip to the library. They have puzzles there. Like you'll find something to do. And there are certain mean library people who are like, the library is for total silence. So don't bring your kid to that library. But a library usually has a playground. Like a library is a great destination. Yeah. Sometimes the library is just a great family outing. Go find the thing that you're most interested in, as opposed to, I have gone to the library, picked out the 4 important books that I want people to think you're reading.
Right.
Because you're going to have conversations with other moms. What's your kids reading? Oh, they're reading, Little Women. And I'm like, oh, my kid is reading, the
Farty
Booger Man. And it doesn't feel great. But allow your kids to explore and leave in their path. Reading is fun and full of information about stuff you care about.
I mean, we're getting to takeaways already, but that's all really good advice.
We're hitting the takeaways early. We'll be back with even more.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH.
My favorite skincare products
actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com. Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, and it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
We both have a child who has some reading processing issues. This is a great detective thing. What's the obstacle to reading? Struggling readers who have a skill deficiency, either dyslexic, phonics, decoding, comprehension. They may have gaps that are making reading hard to access. That's worth figuring out. What is the obstacle here? And I have kids for whom audiobooks were really helpful, and kids who had a lot of trouble picturing the story and would just fade out during an audiobook. At the end of the chapter, I would say, okay, so what happened there? And 2 of my kids would say, well, Harry found the wand that... And one would be like, I was definitely staring out the window. I didn't listen to a thing.
More than one of my kids uses for English class, high school novels kind of things, that they are listening on audiobook and reading at the same time because they have to annotate. I mean, I'm glad teachers are still doing this. You have the paper copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and I should see multiple circles and margin notes on each page. So they have to do that. They annotate, but they're listening at the same time. Both of them feel like it just pulls them through the book. One of them just had to read As I Lay Dying, William Faulkner. So complicated. Thank God for audiobook narrators. I mean, it was barely coherent as an audiobook, but it really helped because I was listening to it in some of our commutes. It helped unpack some of what was not coming across on the page.
Yeah. I just reread Scarlet Letter. Whoa. Man, those descriptions of the forest go on for 15 pages. I'm like, I get that it's a metaphor, guys, but wow, we're deep into the forest.
The longer the better, right? The more pages, the better. I can't wait to read this super long book.
We also have the disinterested reader. This is the category we've talked about. I had a kid who loved those I Survived books. I Survived, and it's a guy whose raft got blown up and he had to eat seaweed, or Things That Will Kill You, or Farty McPoopy Pants. Whatever the things are, disinterested in certain topics, are they interested in other topics?
There's a great series. I want to give a shout out to a series called You Wouldn't Want to Be And it's you wouldn't want to be a pilgrim on Plymouth Rock. You wouldn't want to be a Union soldier in the Civil War. You wouldn't want to be a person who built the pyramids. And it takes you back in time, all kinds of gross facts and fascinating stuff and beautiful comic book drawings and lots of information, but right between the eyes of a 10-year-old who wants to know cool stuff.
The other categories, I think, are an avoidant reader. They don't like to read. They're bored. There's something behind that. And similarly, fixed mindset, I dislike reading. I don't enjoy reading. And watching the story for your kids, for me, it's like, I don't have time to read. Oddly, I did spend 6 hours on the Mormon Wives Reddit page. Like, I do think that if you're in AP English and you're reading and dissecting 4 novels a semester, you may not have time for reading. That's fine. But I try when we're going on vacation, what's the book you're bringing? Like an expectation of reading. I was just having a little yelling time about this in my house that we're going to find an hour a weekend that's like reading. Everyone's got to be reading something for an hour, including us. Build into the conversation an expectation that you're going to be reading.
It's hard, because I'm looking at these different types of readers, and I think I'm wary as we're talking about it, like don't paint the person with a skill deficiency with a reluctant reader brush.
Right.
And don't let the reluctant reader paint themselves with the fixed mindset of I'm just not a reader. There's different reasons this can happen, but I think we're fearing the judgment of others, that we're leaving the library with the wrong kind of books for our kids, right? That other people must be doing a good job of getting their kids to read, or their cousins when we go on vacation sit there and read what is happening. I've been that person. I've felt that way, but I think we have to be careful not to project onto our kids that there's laziness when there might be something else at play. Make very sure that there's not something else at play. And then they still need to read. And then it isn't like, and then stop asking them. Then they need to read even more, but it's hard.
I think in general, getting curious about what's going on with any kid's relationship with reading is a huge first step. I've heard this term in school. You may have heard it as well, the just right book.
Yes.
And so finding books that are at the correct skill level. And there's a 5-finger rule, Amy, for this. Do you want to know the 5-finger rule for reading a book?
Sure.
You ask a kid, raise a finger for each unrecognized word in a book, a chapter, a page, maybe if they're really struggling. 0 to 1 finger is probably too easy of a book. 2 to 3 fingers is a just right book. 4 to 5 fingers, too hard or best read aloud with a parent or a friend.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple sort of guideline, but I had kids over 5 years, a 5-year span. And so finding books that were interesting to the oldest and the youngest at the same time.
This is interesting, though, because I'm thinking about this. Okay, a kid shouldn't read a book that is too easy for them. Why? Well, I think for 2 reasons, right? 1, that you won't get better at reading if you only read books with sight words that you know already. And 2, because it will probably be too boring for you.
That's the key.
It's too baby, right?
Reading is reading. So if they're reading, that's a win. But if they're bored of reading, the 5-finger rule might be a thing to test.
So it kind of undercuts a little bit, or at least suggests it might be another way of looking at, like, reading's reading, yes, but if your 5th graders still only will read Captain Underpants and nothing else, they're missing out on books that would be more challenging, and they're also more rewarding. Like, the challenge and the reward is the same thing, and that's why they shouldn't read books that are too easy for them only forever. If that gets them in the door, yeah. Once they learn to read, they learn to read. But beyond that, you do want something to be, it probably goes for us too, like a little challenging. Little stretching in terms of, I don't know, language or metaphor or whatever. You can read sort of 4 romance novels a day on a Kindle, but if they're super trashy, I guess reading is reading, but then it's also, but there is this rule that you're supposed to get better at it.
Let me see if this makes sense to you. Reading is reading. So as long as a child is reading, seeking out reading, and enjoying reading, forget the 5-finger rule. It doesn't matter to you. If you have a child who lacks interest or avoids reading, it might be worth looking at what they're reading and running these tests against what they're reading in case one of the reasons that they're showing that lack of interest is boredom or it's too hard for them.
Mm-hmm.
And helping them set the book. I had a kid who was so into dinosaurs that they would be able to name, Plateosaurus rex came from the Mesozoic period, from this and that, knew everything. They were 6 years old at the time, but they could sit and memorize those books all day and look at those books all day. I think this becomes more of an issue with independent reading, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Reading is reading. If your kid is enjoying reading whatever they're reading, let them read it. But if you're trying to figure out why they're not, enjoying reading, this might be something to look at.
It could be too easy or too hard.
Yeah.
And having a 5-finger rule is a way in that makes it up to the kid, right? The kid decides, I get the this is too easy for me. I need more of a challenge. And they've decided that for themselves through this cool trick. I can see that being very useful for certain kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Like everybody likes a little bit of a challenge. But don't let it be like, this book has easy words, therefore you're not allowed to read it. That's not the point of the test. So my experience where I read every night to my little kids. They started school and continued a lot of reading. I'm picturing those books with like the digger on the front. It's like photos with a lot of explanations of how all the different Mighty Machines work.
Can you imagine something would be less interesting to you, right? Like, I'm gonna learn all about Mighty Machines.
Not interested.
But to certain kids, yeah.
But I feel like for me, reading became, this is not everybody's experience. For me, reading became much more challenging when my kids were tweens and teens. They lost their interest in reading when they got smartphones.
And so did I.
Bummer. So did I. Right. So did I. So now we're not talking about dyslexia, all the different issues that get in the way of reading. We're not talking about, is this book at the right level? We're talking about the latest TikTok dance is more interesting than reading a book.
I talked to Michaeline Duclef last week about her book, Dopamine Kids, and her sort of overall point is for screens and then for processed food that you don't replace it with nothing. The replacement has to be compelling, a fascinating book about dinosaurs or whatever, and there's like a rule around it. You can't let your willpower run the show, so that having like spaces and places, when we're in the car waiting for your sister to get out of soccer, we're going to read every week, whatever, that you make it that sort of there is no choice. And here's this cool book about something I know you really like is sort of the only way to beat it.
And I think that you can lean in. I have a child right now who is reading The Odyssey on their own because
great book.
They are a movie head and the movie is coming out and they want to read it before the movie comes out. That's working for me. I used to say to the kids all the time when they were little, we're going to read that book before we see the movie. We're not going to watch the movie until we finish the book. And that was motivating. So whatever it is, and I have that feeling myself sometimes. I'm like, I've got to read like Big Little Lies because I know it's in production right now and I want to read it before I watch it, whatever. So we're going to talk about tweens and teens more, Amy, when we get back.
K-pop Demon Hunters Haja Boys breakfast meal and Huntrix meal have just dropped at McDonald's. They're calling this a battle for the fans. What do you say to that, Rumi?
It's not a battle. So glad the Saja Boys could take breakfast and give our meal the rest of the day.
It is an honor to share.
No, it's our honor.
It is our larger honor.
No, really. Stop.
You can really feel the respect in this battle. Pick a meal to pick a side.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
And now, things you will do this spring.
From the What Fresh Hell podcast.
Find things you thought were lost forever as the snow finally melts.
Panic about how late you are to sign up for spring sports before you start to panic about how late you are for summer camp signups.
Realize it's probably too early to pull out the outdoor furniture.
Put out the outdoor furniture anyway.
Make your family eat outside even though it's 45 degrees out because you went to all the trouble of putting out the outdoor furniture.
Your taxes.
You did do your taxes, right? Okay. Go and do your taxes.
Get a little too excited at the farmer's market and buy $100 worth of vegetables.
Curse at yourself a week later as you throw out $93 worth of vegetables.
Get snowed on the sidelines of a soccer game.
Also, get a vicious sunburn on the sidelines of a soccer game.
Make your entire family gather around a single crocus at the park while you shout, "Winter is really going to end!"
This has been Things You Will Do This Spring.
From the What Fresh Hell podcast.
I want to present these tips to you because I think they're useful. Ways to help kids choose books over screens from PCS Classical. Number one is modeling. We hate this. If we're on our screen and telling our kid to read a book, it's not working. Make books part of your routine. You talked about that. When we're at soccer, we're not going to take our phones out. We're going to bring Kindles or our books instead. I try to ask my kids, although right now I know the answer is nothing. What are you reading right now? How is it? Like an expectation of reading, I try to make part of our existence. Guys, it's not going amazing. Not going to lie. Lots of choices, having books around the house. I have bookshelves full of books, and I don't know how often they get read, but I do think having bookshelves in the house is a great idea. There's always an opportunity to read.
I'm a big rotator of what's out on the coffee table.
Yeah.
You sit here for 5 minutes and you're like, oh, what's the Sapiens book about? And you dip in and out.
Yeah, you can take a look at it.
There's some great books like that. I can put a link to a couple that I like in the show notes for this episode. The book sort of like 100 super fascinating things you need to know right now that kind of get you to look at it for 5 minutes. It's a start.
It's a great idea. Reread books you've read before. This is something that I never do. I never
do this.
I'm a one and done. My husband reads the same book 6 or 7 times, and it's deranged. Like, what's wrong with him?
I think you need to be a super reader to do this.
But he's often reading. Like, I'll often look over and he's reading on his iPad generally. And I say, what are you reading? And he's like, oh, I'm rereading The Martian. I know he's read that book 10 times. He just likes it. He rereads it. There's nothing wrong with rereading. Encourage all kinds of reading. So cooking is reading. Read this recipe. Hey, read that sign to me when you're in the car with kids. How do you think you pronounce that crazy street sign? Like, you know, Wapawallakins Avenue. Oh, let's all try to say how we think it's pronounced. Just finding opportunities to use the skill of reading, I think, is important.
This takes me back to something Susan Domina said a long time ago. Friend of the pod, this was another article she wrote, that you need to narrate to your kids. Because sometimes I am, honestly, on my phone, reading an article that I've saved from the New Yorker about, you know, the pyramids in Egypt or something. And even though my kids are big, I still try to make a point of, I'm reading this really interesting speech that somebody sent me to look at. I'm looking at this article because they can't, especially little kids, can't tell, right? It's just mom's looking at the screen instead of me. Mom's just looking at her phone. So I try to like do offline paper reading and model that for my kids. But when I don't, at least let them know, like, I am reading this interesting thing here. I'm going to send it to you. You should read it too. Try to make it visible when it's unclear that that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And I do think now, even though my kids are teenagers, that I need to build in an expectation around reading. On Saturday, if we're together, we're going to take an hour to read. It's happening. Adding that back into their own schedule.
My husband and I did that just this week. It was after dinner. We were sitting down and watch TV. My kid had a lot of homework, so was not going to be watching TV with us. And I don't know what made me think of it. I'm like, let's read for half an hour first, and then we'll watch TV. And he was like, okay. And we had quiet reading time. And afterwards, we were like, that was amazing. Because usually it's like a paragraph after the TV show before you fall asleep. Yeah, we read first.
There's a group in my town that does something called Silent Book Club. And you just go to the bookstore and you just read by yourself, but on the couches at the bookstore while a lot of other people read by themselves.
I would go to that, an accountability partner.
I feel like earlier when we've talked about reading, especially when we had littler kids, it felt very much like the dialogue is, my job is to read to my kids. My job is to make my kids fall in love with reading. And now, having recorded a lot of episodes about invisible labor and other work, my husband has never lost 10 seconds of sleep worrying about whether or not our children are reading enough. This is something we have assigned to ourselves. Its outcome is uncertain and difficult.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I think you should throw your hands up and be like, who cares if they read or not? I have no role in this. But I'm also more wary having this conversation further into my journey about being like, this is your job. Making sure your children read is your job, mom. Not sure that's true.
Right. And I also think you said we're assigning that to ourselves, but I don't think it's our imagination that this is something that we're supposed to be figuring out. Like that is being explicitly said sometimes as well.
For sure, instilling a love of reading. But I think we do have to watch that job description. It is your job to have a specific outcome versus it is your job to model a certain kind of behavior, set expectations around a certain kind of behavior. That's very different than it is your job to create humans who love to read.
Right. Not even humans who read, humans who love it.
Who love to read.
How do you measure success?
They're on a plane with a book, exactly. How do you remember? We flew once, I think, to California from New York. It was 6 hours. There was a dad behind us with maybe a 3-year-old who kept making very loud and kind of look at me, I'm the parent statements about how, no, we don't do screens. Other people on the plane do screens. We read on the plane.
Snore.
And then proceeded in a booming voice to read, I believe, Lord of the Rings aloud to a 3-year-old. And I just wanted to get up and smack the book out of his hands and be like, no one bought tickets to this show.
Right.
No one wants to attend your I'm the greatest parent because I read Lord of the Rings instead of letting my kid look at screen show. Leave me out of it,
Right.
And I'm just reminded that I was sitting with my grown kids the other night and they got talking about books that we'd read as kids. And they were laughing at me because they were like, did you only pick the world's most depressing books? Because the 2 books I loved reading to my kids were The Immortal Family, Tuck Everlasting. Do you know that book?
My kids read it in school, but no, I didn't read that.
Obsessed. I love that book so much. Read it to my kids. And of course, the other one is Bridge to Terabithia. Did you read that book?
No, these are both, but they read them in their grade school.
They're like children's literature that I remember from being a kid, and I read them to my kids, and they're both extremely depressing. They were laughing. They were like, what's wrong with you, freak? And I was like, listen, you still remember those books. We took the RV trip years ago, and I brought Charlotte's Web, and I was like, every night we're going to read a chapter of Charlotte's Web while we sit in the RV or outside of the RV, like watching the sunset. I cherish those memories, and I actually do think those things did my kids a lot of good, but they didn't turn in 3 for 3. None of them are like, listen, if I get 5 minutes of free time, I'm grabbing my novel and sitting in the sun with it. 3 for 3, I have very non-readers.
But it's because we're all up against the same thing. And we as individuals are up against the same thing. As you're talking about Charlotte's Web, the deepness and richness of that experience, that shared, oh my God, like what's going to happen? Is Charlotte really going to die? That feeling, that round the campfire feeling, literally or metaphorically, is so rich. And it's a shared experience. And it is so worth it. It isn't like take your vitamins. It's kind of like the best part of what you remember and what they remember. So that's why, even though this is so difficult, it's totally worth it to find time to read together, because it's the best part in the end.
Some of my favorite memories are like sitting with a cuddly baby and reading Corduroy and the kid clapping whenever you turn the page on Grover. Like,
right.
They were in and of themselves great experiences.
Yes.
As were sitting around on a winter night reading Harry Potter, as was reading Charlotte's Web as part of that RV trip. Listen, my kids groaned every night when I was like, it's reading time. They didn't want to do it. Even worse, I made them keep a journal on the RV. I made them read Charlotte's Web for half an hour and then journal for half an hour. I mean, they've never forgiven me. They still talk about those journals as if I was just putting hot pokers in their face.
Yeah. But that's just it. Like, this leads to experiences where we keep coming at this idea in different episodes. Putting down the phones is worthwhile because the stuff you do instead, it's not just that it's better for you, it's that it feels better. It's that it's more enjoyable. It's that you can look back on it as an experience you participated in. It's great. We want to model reading for our kids, and we want them to have the experience of how fun it is to read a book that you can't put down, that you are grabbing because you love it so much. Like, that's a great human experience to have. And we want our kids to have it. And so instead of beating ourselves up that they don't have it, it's like, how do we walk them towards that?
And it is modeling that reading is fun, demental, but it's also fun. Reading is a really nice way to spend time, as is doing a puzzle together as a family, as is going out and kicking a soccer ball together. It's better than staring at our phones in a dark room. But it's something that we all fall back from and have to practice. I want to take off people's plate that it is their job to create humans who love reading. You could put stuff in anybody's path, but you're really not responsible for whether or not your child develops a love of reading. But I think you are responsible for knitting reading into the fabric of your kids' lives. And you have to do that by modeling that correctly. And I also think you can just look for a million opportunities. We're going to Finland this summer as a family. I'm literally just thinking of this. Let's maybe find some stuff to read about Finland before we go there, or a story that's set there. And then we could find the places from the book.
So our goal is not, can we get our kids to love reading? or even can we get our kids to read, but can we raise our kids in homes where reading is part of what we do? That seems like an achievable goal.
And I think part of which we talked about earlier, can we identify the obstacles to our kids reading and help them through those obstacles? That's part of it. And then can we, as part of the fabric of our kids' lives, make sure that reading is part of that tapestry, because both things are important. If your child is really having trouble accessing reading, you've got to get them help with that. It's important to be able to read well.
It's not a moral failing for the kid, and certainly not for you, right? It's something that needs more attention.
How do you foster a relationship with reading without being like, my 3 kids have not read for pleasure in the last 6 months?
But they're in school.
Which seems scary to me, but that's right. They're in school, they're reading, and I know that one of the goals we want to make for this summer, and do we say, like, let's have a book reading contest, like first person to 10 books this summer, whatever it is there a way I can structure something that helps us with a problem that I've identified? None of us are currently reading for pleasure, and take out of the part, I've failed, I'm a loser. Be part of the solution without identifying yourself as the source of the problem.
If this episode was interesting to you, make sure you listen to our Meredith Schwartz, currently reading podcast host. We're going to talk to her about how to get ourselves reading more and get excited about reading, which sounds like what we've learned today is that's a great place to start.
It's a great place to start, keeping the idea that reading is fun at the forefront of this, and not reading is taking vitamins. It's not taking vitamins.
Right.
It's opening up worlds of words and adventures and all sorts of stuff. And that sometimes we make it feel like taking vitamins.
Yeah. You solved it.
Solved it.
Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. We will put the link in the show notes for this episode, or you can sign up at our website, whatfreshhellpodcast.com. What do you get in our newsletter? Well, once a month, we send you what we're reading, what we're listening to that we haven't talked about on the show, some of our favorite stuff from episodes. And this month, we'll be sure to add the list that I was just talking about that now I have to write. But it'll be a good list of the coffee table books of like super fun facts and figures that you can have them around and they're irresistible, and they might pick it up and read something.
Love that for all of us. And with that, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
You can't reason with the sun. Trust us, we've tried. This summer, it's time to put that angry ball of fire on mute. Columbia's OmniShade technology is engineered to protect you from the sun's harsh rays that can burn and damage your skin. The sun is relentless, but so is our gear. Level up your summer at Columbia.com to spend more time outside and less time slathering on aloe lotion. You're welcome. Columbia, engineered for whatever.